Hi everyone. I thought that I would just release this video a couple of days early. This is my November update because there's just so much happening in our world right now. It's so fast moving, dynamic, event packed, but also so important at the energetic level. So just to encourage you that particularly over the days of the 29th and 30th of October, that you perhaps do more stillness practice, meditation, candle gazing, breath work, time in nature. Really do find time to dive inwards. Those are the days when 3i Atlas is at perihelion with the sun, and I believe they will be powerful days energetically. And people will feel that to varying degrees, but whoever you are, I'd strongly encourage finding a way to turn inwards into stillness. And I'm going to be talking more about this towards the end of the video. So November is another very big month, a very event-packed month, as I say, and we have a full supermoon, the second in a row of 3, on November the 5th. And this is a full supermoon in Taurus. And what a supermoon means is that the moon is closer to the Earth in its orbit. So again, it will appear bigger and brighter. So let's hope we have clear skies to see that. These supermoons are really beautiful. So, but they also have a greater pull on the tectonic plates and also on our psyches as well. And they illuminate things in a bigger way than your average full moon. Just to say before we start to talk about the details of the full supermoon, that on the 8th of November, very close to the full supermoon, Uranus retrogrades back into Taurus. So on the 8th, it will move back into 29 degrees, 59 minutes of Taurus. So it's the anaretic degree. It will stay there all of November, and it will be there all of April until the 26th of April next year, when it moves fully into Gemini for the rest of its cycle. So we really are in very interesting times of endings and beginnings, and I think that will be apparent to you even more so when we look at the chart. So Taurus, and this is on the Taurus-Scorpio axis because the sun and moon are always opposite each other at a full moon, but also the fact that Uranus is retrograding back into Taurus. This is potentially going to give us more seismic activity, more volcanoes, earthquakes. We've seen a lot of those. I mean, already 2025 is the 6th biggest year for seismic activity that has ever been recorded, and we've still got a couple of months to go. And I think they will tend to increase rather than decrease. There's a lot going on, but also Taurus Scorpio is the financial axis. It's to do with stock markets and wealth and money and currency, and I think we'll feel and see a lot more volatility in those areas, and that's really already just beginning. A lot of change in those areas. Also, Neptune is at 29 degrees. That is at its anaretic degree of Pisces. So we have both Uranus and Pisces, well, particularly from the 8th of November, in their anaretic degrees. Neptune will stay at 29 degrees of Pisces until the 27th of January, when it moves fully into Aries again for the rest of its 165-year cycle. So, and of course, it only spends until I believe it's 2033. No, 2039 for Neptune. 2039, I believe it will stay in Aries. Now, you may remember, some of you, when I looked at the chart for Fukushima, it was very interesting because then we had Neptune at 29 degrees of Aquarius and Uranus at 29 degrees of Pisces. So they were both in anaretic degrees at the same moment, literally on that day that Fukushima happened. And they were also in mutual reception, which means they were in each other's signs, and that acts like a conjunction. And we know that Fukushima, there was a great tsunami, and that's very much connected to Neptune and Pisces, and it had affected the nuclear power station, and there was meltdown, radiation, Uranus, etc. Meltdown, Neptune in Aquarius, ruled by Uranus. You know, the symbolism was just so clear. So I'm not suggesting anything like that again, but it's just an indication of how powerful these anaretic degrees can be. And we know also that Neptune is right at the base of the American chart. The American chart dated 4th of July, 1776, Philadelphia, 10 past 5 in the afternoon. The IC, the base of that chart, is at 1 degree of Aries. So Neptune is hovering around there right now. And areas around America have seen huge amounts of flooding. I mean, Alaska has been catastrophic, really tragic, the degree of flooding they've seen there. Neptune is flooding, it's tsunamis, etc. Also terrible flooding in Mexico as well. It isn't the same country as the US, but nevertheless have approximate geography. And so we are going to see, I think, as we go through the rest of this year, more issues in the natural world emerging, and that's quite a big theme, I think, for this full supermoon, but it has great purpose. Neptune at the anaretic degree, this could bring up issues around, again, anything to do with water, seas, oceans, fishing, shipping, toxicity, pollution, oil. The first oil well was actually drilled during the last transit of Neptune moving through Pisces, which was 1848 to 1862. And so it's very associated with that. So plastics, microplastics, these are things that could all come to light in this very big, bright supermoon. The seed point because they are clearly in sextile now, Neptune 29 of Pisces, Uranus is about to move on to 29 of Taurus, they're in very tight sextile. And the seed point for that was in 1993, when essentially that was the launch of the internet and technology went viral. I think this is really reflecting AI going viral in very rapid and unregulated ways. But I think it's also to do with us breaking through to other dimensions of consciousness, actually, to a degree that we've never known before. And that's super exciting. Neptune at 29 degrees of Pisces is also likely to bring up a more charitable urge. We feel as if we want to be more philanthropic. We want to take care of others. We want to share with others, not just have money in the bank account, but do something that makes a difference in the world. And I think also it will bring in a huge wave of compassion for people, animals, sentient beings all over the world. And that's going to be helped by Jupiter in Cancer, that nurturing urge. We feel more compassionate, we feel more connected and empathetic with others. We feel for them. You know, there by the grace of God, it could have been us in these extreme weather conditions or volcanic eruptions or whatever. I also think, and this is related to other astrological aspects too, that we are most certainly going through a period of accelerated psychic upgrade. We're becoming, and many people are reporting this, we're becoming more psychically sensitive, more tuned in, more, it's turning on all clairs, clairvoyance, clairsentience, clairaudience, etc., claircognizance. And so we are tuning in to all of sentient life. More and more of us are having this sense of oneness and connection to all of sentient life. And I feel that profoundly. And I think a big theme of what this full supermoon will show us is potentially how out of balance we have been with our earth, with Gaia and the animal kingdom. There will be, I think, an expansion in our imagination, in our dream activity. Many people experiencing this. So And if you want to connect more to Gaia and all of its sentient beings, you can simply ask your higher self, show me the way to have a greater connection, a greater direct connection, to hear the messages from the animals and the trees. You can just ask your higher self that. I do think that one aspect of Neptune being at the very last degree of the zodiac is, for some people, as the veil falls away, and the veil is also connected to Neptune, there will be a feeling of confusion or overwhelm, or, I'd go as far as to say psychosis, and that's part of its connection to Uranus too, because they're going to be, it could be exposure of things around the media or drugs, or I think a lot of corruption will come to light around public figures. Public figures will be falling from grace. Leaders increasingly will be falling from their positions on the world stage. I think we're going to see a lot of that. We've already seen quite a bit of it, as I mentioned in recent videos, and named various countries and their governments. I think we're going to see more of that because of this accelerated phase that we are in. Now, as I say, 3i Atlas just reached its perihelion on the 29th and 30th of October, and it's now in a very great velocity, hurtling towards its greatest greatest position to Venus, which is on the 3rd of November, and I believe it will amplify the loving quality of Venus, the desire for connectedness, and the love that Venus's symbolism really suggests. That's my sense, that it's in some way an amplifier, or certainly dampening down some of the more negative or aggressive energies. It was just interesting to me, and I don't believe I've mentioned this, but it's just interesting to me that the peace initiative in the Middle East began pretty much as 3i Atlas was at its closest point to Mars. And of course, that isn't a pattern, it's a one-off thing, and let's pray to God that peace deal sticks and we don't go into more suffering and death. So that's just interesting to note. It's not a pattern, it's a one-off. So let's just see when it passes Venus. And of course, it's then coming closest to the Earth on the 19th of December. And then finally to Jupiter, closest point, on the 16th of March. And then it begins to exit its solar system. And we believe this is a one-time only flyby. 3i Atlas is not on an orbit. It's a one-time flyby. And it's one of the most fascinating things about it. What is it bringing to us? So let's take a look at the chart for the full supermoon on the 5th of November. Okay, so as always, ignore the clock face, ignore the houses. We're just looking at the positions of the planets, the signs they're in, their aspects to each other. And as I say, the sun and moon are always opposing each other at a full moon. So here we have the full moon at 1323 of Taurus. Now, just before we go into analysing this, just again note the number of planets either at their final degree or the kind of 0 or 1 degree. We've got Neptune here, 29 degrees. We've got Uranus and Sedna, 0, 1 degree. We've got Venus coming close to that, 28 degrees. We've got Mars at 0 degree, and we have Pluto at 1 degree. So again, this very strong sense of endings and beginnings that is coming in so powerfully for us now. And so with the full moon at 1323 of Taurus, as I say, it's shining a bright light potentially on financial issues, markets, currencies, wealth, banking. Taurus is also related to precious metals, to gold and also to silver. The moon is exalted in Taurus, and the moon is related to silver. And if you've been watching them recently, gold has just last week, in fact, excuse me, hit an all-time high, and silver is on an absolute tear at the moment. I understand there's very little left to sell in some geographies. So gold, natural resources, and I think this will also shine a very bright light on natural resources, on nature, and how we have used, abused, and exploited nature. And I think whatever natural occurrences we start to see at this time, of course in the Northern Hemisphere it's going into winter, whether it's more flooding, I mean very close to, well, where I live, again, I'm checking the tides already before I go out on the roads, because I can be easily cut off from my local small town just a mile away. So with people canoeing over the local bridge. So, and that's what happened in a recent winter as well. So, I'm not in an extreme situation, anything like that. People are in much worse. But I just think Gaia is going through her own upgrade. And we will see that reflected in natural events, I think for sure. But it will make us understand how perhaps out of balance we have been in our relationship with nature. I think that's a really, really big theme here. This could well shine a bright light on any financial secrets. This is big money, hidden money, illicit money, criminal money. Shine a very bright light. And again, that pulls us back to public figures or leaders. There could be things revealed related to finance as well. So, and people could fall very rapidly from their positions. As I say, you're probably very aware of what's happened to a member of our royal family recently. Also, because we also have here, Venus is the ruler of this full supermoon because it rules Taurus, and Venus is in a T-square here to Pluto and Jupiter. So as I mentioned last time in the last video or two, this brings up, and it's just about it, an opposition here, issues around leadership, the quality of leadership we want. Remember that Pluto is in the sign potential of the shift of the power to the people, and Pluto is also out of bounds, much more revolutionary behaviour until the 23rd of November. Remember Rosie Finn's immaculate and vast research on that topic. But also because we have Pluto and Jupiter squaring Venus, again, that emphasises, I think, the potential extremes we could feel in not only Gaia's rebirth, but what's happening in the financial area, because Venus, as I say, is also related. It's the ruler of Taurus, related to money, currencies, finance, banking. There could be greater moves towards digitization, which we know there's a strong impetus for amongst governments, but it is going to, whatever is happening, it's going to intensify, because Pluto is always intensifying. So for some people, they can become very, very wealthy under this aspect. For others, it can be much more challenging. This also brings up issues around relationship, because this can bring up in your personal relationship, particularly if Venus at 28 of Libra is falling in your 5th house of relationships, 7th house of relationships. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you can download a free birth chart from my website. Go to this link below and get a 2-part video series that will take you to my store, and you can watch those 2 videos to infinity. This isn't a birth chart analysis, these are teaching videos, about how to find these points in your chart and what every update I do means for you. But yes, there could be jealousy or possessiveness coming into relationships, or you just sort of see the relationship under the very bright light of this full supermoon in a very different way and want to move away from it. So that's another aspect of this T-square. And in fact, it's just about, again, a cardinal grand cross, because again, we're picking up an opposition between Venus and Chiron and Eris, and also the square to Jupiter. So it's out of sign with Pluto, but so you'd call it a cardinal grand cross, because the three corners of the cardinal grand cross are in cardinal signs. And Pluto is just about still in this square, but in a fixed sign, not a cardinal sign. But this again brings up all kinds of intensities around relationship and sense of victimhood. If you feel like a victim in your relationship, if you feel that your partner is being too controlling, Pluto too dominant, too overbearing, and you felt like a victim in it, and now part of you wants to rebel from that and step more into your sovereignty, these are the kinds of issues that can come up in a relationship. So the other message we're getting here about the Earth is the fact that Homer is it's out of sign, but tightly conjunct the ruler of this full supermoon, which again is in its own sign of rulership, Libra, needing to find balance. And that's going to apply to the Earth too. This love of the Earth being rekindled, love of the Earth being rekindled, and a need to find harmony and balance. And that's so much what Homer is about too. Remember, Homer and her fire goddess aspect birth the 8 islands of Hawaii. She's all about a shamanic, instinctive relationship with nature, really reading nature and the rhythms of nature. She's all about a real love of the Earth. And so this is very strong here. And Taurus as a sign is probably the best sign for getting in touch with stillness. With Taurian energy, it has a real appreciation of the natural rhythms of the Earth, the rhythms of the seasons, the love of nature, the beauty of the colors. And it is by far the best sign to encourage us to sit in stillness, be in nature, and just have a sense of wonder and awe at nature. As we move into these changing seasons, whether you're moving into spring in the southern hemisphere or autumn and winter in the northern, with all the colors changing, every season gives us the potential to see the beauty and the wonder and the power of nature in all her glory. I also feel, by the way, talking about these issues, that because we will start to reconnect to other species, and we're starting to see this already, I'm seeing in the news that sea creatures, dolphins, for instance, are being released from entertainment into marine sanctuaries. I think sea life has been closed in some countries. And although it wouldn't be possible to release the dolphins totally to the wild because they've lived in captivity, they can be released to a marine sanctuary. So that kind of compassion for the animal world, which I feel immensely, is going to come in more strongly too. Taurus, I always think of as that wonderful card in the tarot with all of that abundance. Can't quite remember the card right now, but she symbolizes abundance. She's a kind of priestess of abundance. And Taurus is also very connected to fertility. as well. And there's a sense of the womb space coming in here. This is something Kelly Kilodney is talking a lot about at the moment, the womb space. Kelly downloaded some time ago 55 amazing light codes, and she's very lovingly teaching them. And she's about to move into the one connected to the womb space. I'm going to come back to that later in this video. So there's a sense of really us starting to reconnect to the animal world, to nature, to recognize where we've been out of balance. And another thing that emphasizes that too is the fact that Saturn, kind of the reality check here, reality check around water, oceans, seas, toxicity, pollution in water, how we've treated our water, put it through straight line pipes, not cared about how we structure it, etc., put all kinds of chemicals in it. That is in what's called a quindicile, 165-degree aspect to Maki-Maki. So a reality check on the symbolism of Maki-Maki. Now, Maki-Maki, as you may have heard me mention, is the creator god of the Rapa Nui people on Easter Island. And it isn't just the mythology of Maki-Maki, it's actually the history of Maki-Maki, that Easter Island had a thriving ecosystem until the sailors, the European sailors, arrived in the sort of 17th, 18th centuries, pillaged the land, cut down all the trees, brought disease, and the island was really ravaged and reduced to a tiny population. I think it was just over 100 natural inhabitants. It was kind of crazy. But because of the inhabitants' the residents' understanding of natural rhythms, they were able to regenerate Easter Island back to a thriving ecosystem. Regeneration. So just like Homer, Maki-Maki is a very strong symbol for regeneration of nature, rebirth, regeneration. But the quindicile highlights the reality check of where have we actually got to in the bright light of this full supermoon. So it's a kind of obsession. Quindicile is an obsession or upheaval or upset around those issues. So I think, again, we could see, some natural occurrences happening at this time. So another aspect to highlight, I mean, some of the, the long-running aspects in this, like the this Yod, this finger of fate, finger of God, Homer, Uranus, Sedna, and Neptune I've talked about at great length, and Pluto's square to Homer, and Pluto's trine also to Uranus and Sedna. I've talked about those long running aspects in other videos, like the big picture, the metamorphosis for humanity. I've talked about them at great length, so I won't repeat everything I've said there, but they are long running, certainly for the next 3 years. So I'll put the links for those below so you can check those out, because they really do set the bigger context for everything I'm saying here. And also just to say, yeah, I'm going to come back to Sedna in a moment. There's a Uranus, in fact, it's Uranus Sedna, very tight opposition to Mars. Now, whenever you get a hard aspect between Mars and Uranus, you get a big drive for freedom. I want freedom. When you get Uranus transits to your natal Mars, there's a real revving up of I want freedom, nobody to box me in, I want change, I want variety, I want to break the patterns. There's a very strong urge. So see where both Uranus and Mars are falling in your chart, because of course Sagittarius, that Mars is in, is also the sign linked to freedom. And at the very first degree, that's very emphatic. I want freedom. I want to travel. I want to do my own thing. I don't want to be boxed in and told what to do. And remember, Pluto in Aquarius, part of the people, very strong sense of sovereignty here. And also, of course, I didn't mention it, but see where this full moon is falling in your own chart, 13 of Taurus. Where is it falling? What is it highlighting? where is the sense of completion or culmination or closure, or where is it shining a bright light on what you didn't see before so clearly? Because you're going to very probably see it now. So yes, so strong urge to freedom. And also remember, not just Sagittarius is all about freedom, but Gemini is non-conformity. I don't want to be like the others. I want to do my own thing. So these very strong themes of freedom and sovereignty are, again, writ large here. And in quite an obsessive way. And yes, we could have some very angry words around that. There's just been a huge protest in London last Saturday around this increasing move towards digitization. You're probably very well aware of that. And do remember, as I've emphasized heavily in the past, that Pluto in Aquarius can work both ways. It can work either to express as control by technology or the power to the people. And it's up to us to choose where to put our focus and attention and energy. I think I've banged that drum enough times for you to understand what I've been talking about. So we also have a water grand trine here. We have Saturn, Neptune, trine to Mars, and they are both trine to Jupiter. So together with also this sense of a need for freedom and endings and beginnings, there's a sense of the visionary, the futuristic, the idealistic being grounded by Saturn. Pragmatic, building for the long term, but really visionary. How can we build a better world, a much more loving world where people have more freedom, people have more care, we share more equally. Venus in Libra, we share more, it's more equitable, we don't hoard it all for ourselves. And also remember, we are absolutely in the crucible of metamorphosis. I could not emphasize more strongly where we are in humanity's evolution. It's not 10 years down the road. It's not even 5 years down the road. We're in it. We are absolutely in this crucible of transformation right now. And it's a one-time experience that we're in right now. We had the rehearsal over the last few months. We are in this one-way process. Yes, we're integrating and reflecting how well the rehearsal went, what we change, what we'd bring in as something new, and then the energy gets very different in 2026 as we move through those early months. So we're not going back to a dress rehearsal. We're not going back to that. We're moving forwards now. We truly are. Even though there's this a period of introspection, integration, it's before the launch. And Sedna, of course, encourages us to upshift consciousness, because Sedna in her myth had to move from hanging on by her fingers to the kayak, the old form of security that she knew, the only way to save herself at that state of being, that level of consciousness as a 3D being. But once her father chopped her fingers off and her fingers floated down to the deep and became these beautiful sea creatures, dolphins and whales, etc., she had no choice but to transmute, upshift her consciousness and become the goddess of the deep, icy waters of the Arctic. She dramatically upshifted her consciousness. It wasn't just a linear change, it was a complete metamorphosis of state, and that's what we're going through right now. Develop daily mantras for yourself. I'm already on my highest timeline. I'm raising my frequency of love every day. Something like that, whatever feels right for you. So I think those are the main things that I want to say about this chart, because, as I say, so many of them I've covered in past videos. But what I do want to really emphasize is this need to book more stillness meetings with us, with ourselves, because what changes our state is our frequency. Not so much our actions. Our actions come from our frequency because we start to act from a different state of being, but the foundation is the different state of frequency. And we can get to that different state of frequency by dropping into stillness. That's one of the most, I'd say almost the most important thing to do right now, with all of these rapidly changing energies day to day. And yes, of course, we're being helped by these incredible cosmic energies coming in for us right now, these new light codes, and they're coming via our sun and to us. And the more aware we are and the more conscious we are that they are ingredients for our evolution, the more we will be able to embody them. You know, we are becoming New Earth ourselves. It isn't a place, it's a frequency that we are embodying. And so what will help us to jump in frequency is absolutely not just a linear build from the past. It's absolutely not going to be that. It's kind of stepping out like the Fool in the tarot into something very different. It's a pattern interrupt. It's a step change. And I often think if we're just day to day reacting to 3D events, not only very often are we kind of giving away our power to the external whatever, but we're not using our energy so much to create. And what we need to do right now, these incredible new energies coming in, I do absolutely believe 3i Atlas is part of that, together with its cavalry of comets, as I've called them, is creation. And how do we create the greatest? So what I'd suggest to you is develop a daily practice. In fact, several times a day, if you can do that, and do, you know, particularly in these next few months, do it. And particularly in these next few months, just promise yourself you're going to do this, because this is all for free. You don't need to go anywhere, read a book, take a course. You just do this for free at home. Decide that you will, when you go into these stillness meetings with yourself, that you will leave behind your old stories, your old wounding, your old identities of he said, she said, your old judgments, all of that stuff that has defined who you are today. To all of you, you know, when you introduce yourself to a new person, how do you explain yourself? You know, who are you? What do you do for a living? What's your background? You know, what's your history? What's your story? Leave all of that behind for your stillness meetings. You can put it in a little wooden box at the door of what I'll call your sacred cocoon that you're going to create each day and several times a day. Just in a little wooden box, you can pick them up again if they're still relevant, all your worries and cares and anxieties when you're finished. But for the period that you're in your sacred cocoon, just leave them at the door. Promise yourself you can do that, because what's most important here is to really be in a neutral state, a state of divine neutrality, a state of 0 point, because that's the purest, most transformative, most transparent state you can be in. So think of being in peace, in love, just at that absolute 0 point. That all that stuff you've left at the door absolutely doesn't matter in your sacred cocoon. You might light a candle, you might burn some incense, whatever you need to create that state of sacredness and stillness. And coherence is a big part of this. Because when you're in incoherence, it's, when you're jazzed up, when you're in fear, anxiety, overwhelm, push, 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 it's like interference on a television set, and that's very hard to create wonderful futures from, because you're going to create from that frequency of interference and anxiety and fear and, all of that. So, if you go to that wonderful, you can go to the yogic belly breath, which is on my website. I've got a meditation page now, which has some a couple of free meditations on there for the 15-minute daily meditations we do. I've put them to 2 different soundtracks. You can either keep on doing what you're doing, if that's working well for you, or you can occasionally use my suggested free music tracks there. But there's also a yogic belly breath explanation and the very short 10 minutes there that you can use. But it's really, you can also borrow from the heart math breath, very hard to say, because that creates coherence where you just connect with your heart. You can put your hand on your heart. And initially I just take 3 big, deep breaths in and out, just 3 big, deep breaths. And as you do the out breath, just imagine just everything falling away from you. Anything that is not in coherence, that's still in your energy field, just whoomph, give it back to the earth. Have that sense with every out breath, you're just giving it back to the earth. And have that sense, you can either feel it running through your body and out of your feet, or just literally asking the earth to deal with it. And with every subsequent, and very much think that you're breathing in and out of your heart with this. This is the heart math technique. It's also a yogic breathwork technique, actually, that you're breathing in and out through your heart as if your heart were your lungs. And as you breathe in, have a sense of expansion and spaciousness. So with every in-breath, you have a sense of your world is getting bigger. It's more expansive. And with every out-breath, and try to make those out-breaths just slightly longer than the in-breath, you have this feeling it's all falling away. And as you feel that you're coming into coherence, energetic coherence, which will, of course, have benefits to the health of every cell in your body, feel some of the emotions that you want to see in your reality. Feel love, feel gratitude, feel joy, feel peace. Any emotions that you want to see, joy, any emotions that you want to see in your reality and in the world at large, just start to feel some of this, because we create from frequency, which is what these emotions are about, high frequency, and we create from coherence. If you're incoherent, you'll be attracting more of the incoherence. And just imagine that vision. And what this does as well is get you out of your head and into your heart. And this is where we're going as a humanity. Out of the head, the buzziness, the stress, that's where we feel it all, overthinking, over-rationalizing, over-preparing, and dropping into our hearts. And in this way, in this practice, and just do this, for a few minutes, ideally do it several times a day, if you can, even just for 5 minutes, several times a day. And you become the loving dream weaver of your future. In your sacred cocoon, you become the living, the loving dream weaver of your future. That's what you're doing. And I've done this many times in my life and manifested things like my little house in France was an absolute replica of the image I had of what I wanted to buy when my mother passed away and left me a small inheritance. Always, with any practice like this, always set the intention, this is for my highest good, the highest good of all, the highest good of the earth. And just have that feeling, that general sense of we're welcoming in an ever-expanding consciousness of love. That will serve us very well. So, as I've mentioned before, I did a recent video on Three Eye Atlas, and I'll put the link for that below, because, and as I said there, you know, for the last 18 months or so, I've been talking about this shift in consciousness, this metamorphosis. And I filmed, I think, gosh, at least a year ago, a video called Convergences and Game Changers. And again, I'll put the link for that below, because I really knew in my bones that there was going to be some kind of a game changer, some kind of a catalyst, some kind of something that would jump us. It would be a jump. It wouldn't be a linearity. It would be a jump, an accelerant, a catalyst of some kind. And I absolutely believe Three Eye Atlas is it. And boy, is it moving fast. I think 130,000 miles an hour at the moment. I mean, it's just zipping by in this one-time flyby. And I believe that's the game changer. I do believe that this is an absolutely golden opportunity not to be missed, to step into a higher octave of consciousness, because what is, I believe, and I think Kelly Kolodny has said this in her channeling, it's bringing in a wave of love for humanity. A wave of love. And, you know, too many people are feeling these consciousness shifts for us all to be wrong. And I've started to feel them very, very strongly. You know, it was about 10 days ago, and it was one of those sleepless nights. You know, you either sleep forever or you can't sleep at all. It was one of those sleepless nights. I'd been awake since about 1 o'clock in the morning, and I was still awake at 5 o'clock in the morning. And at 5 o'clock in the morning, I suddenly got incredibly hot. And then I started to feel this incredibly powerful waves of energy going up my spine. I mean, just immense waves of energy, to the point I wasn't solid, and I was just these waves of energy. And the upper half of my back, which is where I feel hold most of my tension, was brilliant green, waves of energy. And it went on for, it was hard to judge the time, maybe 2-3 minutes, something like that. And my third eye then popped into brilliant kind of oily paint that was moving around in a mandala. It was brilliant emerald green, like the waves coming up my back. And this oily paint started to form these beautiful patterns. It was pulsing and moving and radiating, and these beautiful patterns of mandalas in the paint. Vivid, pin sharp. It was very much a third eye experience, because my eyesight isn't that sharp. And then a silhouette of my body appeared in the center of my third eye, and in the center of this pulsing emerald green splodge of oily green paint. That's the only way I can describe it. And the whole experience lasted maybe 5 minutes. I'll remember it for the rest of my life. It was incredibly vivid, sharp, crystal clear. And it was just, and you know, I'm not suggesting in any way I'm unique in this. People are experiencing their own versions of things all over the world right now. It's just odd that the heart chakra color is green. It's just odd that the coma tail of Three Atlas is brilliant emerald green. It's just odd, isn't it? So make of that what you will, but we can't all be wrong. These people having increased psychic experiences as we are in this process. So I really would suggest to you that have no fear, welcome in the amazing opportunity that I think Three Eye Atlas is bringing us, this wave of love, as Kelly Kolodny has described in her recent channelings, the birth of the galactic consciousness on the Capricorn solstice. I think we are absolutely in that. The more open we are to the energy, the more we can embody and the more we can anchor it in for others. We can anchor in that higher octave of consciousness for others. We become more light. And it's interesting, this idea around the sacred cocoon and the fertility in the womb space, which is, and Kelly, as you probably, well, many of you know, she spent 3 days in total darkness very recently and had, you know, some profound experiences. And I'll put the link of when she was talking about that in a recent YouTube video below. But also Ann Tucker, in a recent video, her last update, in fact, was talking about really this sense of going into stillness in a neutral state. And so it's down to each of us whether we step into this golden opportunity, welcome it, integrate it, book stillness meetings, create your sacred cocoon day to day as we move through this very fast flyby of 3i Atlas. It's up to each of us. The more of us that do this, the faster this incredible upgrade, upstepping into this new consciousness will happen. But it's entirely down to our own choice. But I suggest that it would be a shame to miss this golden opportunity. I hope that's helped. I hope it hasn't been too much of a pamble, another ramble. But I just, you know, I felt this so strongly in my bones for the last 18 months, and now we are in it. And I didn't know how it's going to manifest, but we're now here. Much love to you all. Bye for now. Be back soon.